Okay, here we go. We are on it. We are ready to go. We are rolling. This is Mainline Executive Coaching, ACT. We're seated. We're in our positions. We trust you're in your positions too. To let's do this together. That's what we're doing here. Mainline Executive Coaching, ACT, is about helping you, the leaders out there, become the best leaders you can possibly be. Whatever the organization may be, if you're in business for yourself or you're an emerging leader, whatever it may be, we're here to help you. We're here all about you. And hopefully you get that as we talk and we visit with you and us back and forth there that, we have a great love for talent, great love for people that are leaders that want to be great leaders. It's what we're all about here. And so I'm here today with my partner, as usual, Rich Barron. Say
Hello.
hi, Rich.
How you doing?
Good.
Good,
All right.
good to see y'all today.
Well done. I'm Michael Bailey, and I think we have an interesting topic here. I hope it's interesting. We'll see how it goes. This is Rich's idea. And so, Rich, I'm going to turn it over to you. So, Mike is yours.
All righty. Today is kind of a special day, 125th episode of Mainline Executive Coaching ACT. We have very blessed with the following that we have. We're currently in about 40 countries. They're worldwide, over 270 cities. We have some great listeners out there. But the one thing that we have never really done is truly introduce who we are. Introduce who we are and what makes us tick as executive coaches. And so today, I wanted to interview Michael as essentially our guest on the show, or guest host, whatever you want to call him, today. But we're going to learn some more about Michael. And the reason why, let me kind of unpack this a little bit for you. There has been a lot of discussion lately amongst coaches and other folks out there how to choose an executive coach. What really are the attributes you want to look for in an executive coach? Do you want someone with a lot of theory and knowledge or background? Do you want someone with real world experience that knows how to put these things into practice, or a great combination of both? Where does this go from? So we're going to start. I want to start and tell you a little bit about Michael, if I could, Michael, before we get started in some questions. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about Michael. Now, Michael is not only my coaching partner, but I consider a great friend and mentor to me, because he's very knowledgeable. I met him in one of his classes, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Michael. So Michael, to date, he has spoken to over 70,000 entrepreneurs and business leaders throughout the world, essentially. We have even some great testimonials we're going to read a little bit later on about people from different countries who have worked with Michael. So Michael has trained scores of coaches in personal development and entrepreneurial mindset. He has personally coached over 2,000 people, including personal development, entrepreneurial mindset again, and leadership development as an executive coach. He's trained businesses in cultural development for improved teamwork and emotional intelligence. He's wrote hundreds of lessons and worksheets for personal, emotional intelligence and leadership development. He's developed internet business coaching curriculum that produced over $5 million in sales. And he has been at this for more than 30 years. So, what else do you want in a coach? I'm telling you, Michael has it all. So I want to read I'm going to come back to some of these, Michael. Let's get into some other questions about you. I'm going to let you tell us, tell our listeners about yourself. Maybe your 60-second or your however long elevator speech.
Well, let's just take it from this way. I never intended to become a coach. It was never what I wanted to do. I was kind of on a different path, different trajectory. And then years and years ago, I got myself into a very bad place, hanging around with the bad people, wrong kinds of people. Got into some drugs and some other kinds of things. I was a little bit, when I was younger, a little bit prone to depression anyway. And I got myself into a real spot. And I knew that if I didn't do something about it, I was going to have some real difficult times. So my whole thing began with I'm in a really bad place and I got to do something about it. I can't hide from it. And it began this journey. And what I found out was, as I was working with these different groups of people and so on, that I kind of had a knack for listening to people and hearing them and hearing what was going on and figuring them out very, very quickly. Just kind of a thing. I got, some people got different kinds of talents, different kinds of abilities. And that kind of got me on this path. And years later, I ran into somebody who was telling me about something that had to do with coaching. I didn't quite understand what it was. And he shared that with me. And it just like my brain just lit up on fire. This is incredible stuff. I love this. There was just this kind of a natural affinity for it. More time passed. Nothing was really happening with what it is he was doing. And eventually, about 10 years later, I fell into this group where I was selling coaching with Zig Ziglar and Ken Blanchard and Dennis Waitley. And again, I just really kind of liked it, this whole kind of thing. A few years passed, and the internet pops up, and invited to join a business. And we were doing coaching out about just business. How do you get people to businesses online? And nobody knew how to do it. In all honesty, nobody had a clue how to actually do it. It was so new, so out of the Wild West kind of stuff. And so I began writing these series of lessons about how to do this kind of stuff. And what I found out was this. This is true for leadership. This is true for personal development, entrepreneurs, however you want to take a look at it. Technology is pretty straightforward stuff. The problem is, the biggest problem people have is themselves. They are their biggest stumbling block to achieving and becoming and developing themselves, no matter where it is they're coming from. And we all have this big blind spot. And to a large extent, coaches are all about shining the light, not only on the good stuff and the average banal kind of stuff, but more importantly, starting to focus on what are the things that are holding you back, really, derailing you, sabotaging you, or stuff that you just are not even aware of, and helping you to start addressing that stuff. And so I think the expertise that I've developed over the years is an ability to see through a lot of the stuff that happens and see what the real core stuff is, listening keenly to what people are saying, and then helping them find those points of movement. They're going to help move them forward to where they want to go, what they want to do, what they want to achieve, and ultimately who they want to become. So I've run my own coaching business as well, worked with a lot of coaches and helped them become better people, not just better coaches, but better people. But I think when you really get down to it, Rich, the heart of a coach is that individual that has the motivation to make a difference in people's lives. That's not enough, though. It really isn't enough. As we talked about before, when you go into a situation with somebody, you've got to have some real chops about how to work with them, because you have no idea where they're going to go. You have no idea what they're going to do. You have no idea in a lot of ways where they're coming from. And that ability is what I call a craft, the craft of a coach. You got to have this craft. It's like any other kind of craft, whether you're a woodwright or, back in the days that they did, barrel wrights and wheelwrights. It's a craft. And you add to that craft, you also add science, things that we do with the surveys, getting getting information in about what's going on. And then there's that sense of the art about, I'm going to do this now. Let's do this now, to get people moving, get them to a better place. And what do they want to be in our case, about leaders? How do you pull that out of them? How do you encourage that out of them? And along the way, there are a lot of traps. There are a lot of landmines. There's a lot of unexpected things that take place that I guarantee you they never expected to have happen. But being the coach, you're kind of guiding them through that to find that sweet spot for them, and then always moving to the next one and the next one, next one. So it's not the kind of thing that just happens. I guess the way I'd look at it is, over the years, it's where I ended up, and I think there's a reason I ended up here. There's a lot of, you got to pay for this. You really do have to pay your dues to get into this thing. You just can't put out your shingle and say, yeah, I'm that guy, I'm that gal. Talk to anybody who's been in this business for a while, they'll say, you really do have to pay a price. Otherwise, you're really not that much of a help.
It's interesting you say that. It's about doing your due diligence. And I agree. So I'm going to ask you this question, Michael. And you mentioned art and science. There's an art to being a coach, having your chops up to speed, developing those chops so you know which direction you need to go in, having the right science, having the right assessment, having the right tools to help you get get to a certain point. So let me ask you this, Michael. What attributes do you possess as a world-class executive coach?
Good question. I think, again, it kind of goes back to some things of the ability to just listen keenly, watch keenly, about, really observe people, be there palpably watching them, observing them, having no judgment. There's no judgment. I don't judge people. I don't have the brains or the wisdom or the intellect to judge people. That's way out of my wheelhouse. I think there's a certain amount of discernment you must have, the ability to recognize patterns and see things that are happening, ability to deal with different kinds of personalities and see, how they work. And I suppose in some ways have a great fundamental belief in a couple of things besides yourself. One, a fundamental belief in how people work. That's a big thing. We all kind of work in the same ways, generally speaking. Um, People, we're just human beings. That's that whole deal. The other thing is profound belief in individuals and the goodness that is in an individual, the goodness and the potential that's there. I think the thing that I notice more than anything is that people have so much more potential than they realize, and they know it. That I just know there's more. I don't know how to get to it. I don't know what to do about it. We all sense that. We're all frustrated by that. We just don't know quite how to get there, how to engage that. And that's what part of what the coach does. It begins that process of disengaging people from limiting beliefs, limiting perceptions, and start releasing them from their fears, from their doubts, so that they can start taking on these challenges, these difficulties, these things that they want to do, and encouraging them in a way that they're willing to be a little bit braver, a little bit more courageous, a little bit more willing to, go a little deeper into the pool to find out what it's all about. And that in itself, Rich, there's a sequence to things. However, there's also the art of what's the right time. Because if you push too hard on somebody, you challenge them too much, you can just see them starting to sink. They start getting overwhelmed. They're already overwhelmed, be honest. We're all already preoccupied and overwhelmed. So it's that gentle nudging from this place to that place. Let's go do this. Let's play with that for a while. Let's go over here. And as you start doing that, I think that's one of the things I'm kind of good at, saying, I think this is where we're at. This is what we're going to do. And as do that, you start seeing them growing. And I think, I don't know what it is. For me, I'll often get up in the morning, I'll think about coaches and clients that I have for that day. I'll have ideas pop into my head already about, I got to do that with this one, this one, this one, this one's what I'm thinking about. And then when I get on the phone or on Zoom with them, it's like we're meeting. There's that match. It's like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to talk about today. This is exactly what I was had in my mind. This is exactly what I wanted to do. So there's this kind of strange synchronicity, Rich, that is, it's very strange, this connection that you start getting with clients. And it has this synchronicity to it that together we really are, it's not just so many words, but there's this sense of together we really are making this journey, in your evolvement as a leader, as your involvement as an executive in some sort of organization. There really is some sort of thing that's beyond just the intellectual. And I think that's part of it. See, people want to sometimes quantify it so much that it's a science. Then other times it becomes so kind of mystical that there's no science in it. And so this combination of the art of it, and the craft of it is really what it is. I don't believe anybody can be a coach. Just because you want to make a difference, it's not enough. You really got to pay your dues, as I said before. And a lot of books, a lot of talking to people again and again and again, going over principles and helping them to see it, taking those principles and putting them into action. That's really what it is, because people on one hand can be really tough. On the other hand, they can be incredibly fragile. Just,
Right.
Get feelings hurt, you say the wrong thing, you did the wrong, and but it's just part of the gig here, how to figure that out. And again, you've got some great people out there that are leaders, and they're smart, they're tough, they're capable, and yet there are places where They got some rough spots to work out. And it takes, even for those people, to be honest with you, it takes a lot of courage to go and look in the dark corners and say, yeah, this is what I'm not doing. I'm not measuring up here. It takes a lot of courage. And as coaches, we can't be there to judge them. All we can be is there to go, yeah, come on, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Let's come to the sunlight. Let's deal with it. Let's deal with the wound. Let's deal with the pain. We'll get through it. And out of that, you come out stronger. You come out clearer. You come out better prepared to lead and to work with people in your organization and even in your own life.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned something right at the front about not being judgmental. And I want to read this testimonial about you. And this is from a client from Australia, okay, from Australia. And I'm not going to mention names, individuals' names, but just know this person is a sales strategist and private advisor in Australia. And he says, Michael is able to hold one accountable without judgment. He has the ability to help one see what is on the tip of your nose. Michael is able to work through and help you see what might be blocking you from achieving your desired outcomes, giving clarity and focus. So it's interesting you say that you're not judgmental, then you turn around and you look at the testimonials from your clients who agree with you. You're not judgmental. It's a safe place to be able to give 100%. So let me ask you this question, Michael. And first, maybe a statement. And we've talked about this quite a bit, where some of the people out there in leadership development feel as if I can get this from a book. I can read about this and I can, check mark. I can make myself a spreadsheet and I can check these things off and develop these terrific habits and stuff. But honestly, why does it take a coach? Why, in your opinion, does it take a coach to really get you to that next level?
Okay, that's excellent. Well, first off, number one, we each have our own perceptions, and our perceptions are based upon our experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those experiences, we embrace them, sometimes we kind of shade them, sometimes we avoid them. Some things we're willing to look at, and others we don't. Nonetheless, we just have our own perception about it. You cannot be objective at the same time you are the subject. That's the biggest problem. You cannot be. And even if you have a mentor or a couple, three of them, they're going to still be working from that point of view of being a mentor. That doesn't mean that they necessarily have the skills. The skills of a mentor are different than the skills of a coach.
Yes.
Really very, very, very different. It's like the difference between saying, somebody goes down to checks your eyes, and then somebody goes in to talk to a specialist about these sorts of things. This is what's really happening here. Plus the fact that a coach has been in the business for a while. They not only have their perceptions, their perspectives that they're bringing, but they're also bringing hundreds, sometimes thousands of interactions that they've had with individuals in all these different ways and nuances. There's no way that you can do that on your own. I mean, this is stuff that comes from a lot of time, a lot of work on the phone, online with people. So you're getting a whole different story. It's like somebody going into, again, seeing a doctor. I think I got something going on, and the doctor can't figure it out, so I'm going to send you to a specialist. They've got different tools, different experiences. It's just a whole other level of working with somebody that's got a lot of experience, a lot of insight, a lot of interactions. That makes that difference. And until you actually get into that conversation with somebody, you're going, well, I think I know what this is. And then they start asking you some questions and they start unpacking it. All of a sudden you're going, wait a minute, I don't know that. I wasn't sure about that. Oh, I never thought about that. How about that? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden it's starting to unpack. And then not only is it unpacked, then the coach can start asking you questions that now start to allow you to move in a direction to start connecting it up. Well, does that kind of sound like it's like this also? Yeah, that's, I hadn't thought about it. Yeah, and then there's, this is making a lot more sense to me. And that's a conversation you could never have had with yourself. You don't have that ability to step back out far enough to really see it. And even if you are pretty good, at critical thinking, and there are a lot of people that are very good at critical thinking, it's still that experience that the coach brings that brings all sorts of different kinds of insights and meaning to. Okay, so, and part of it also, people tend to be kind of hard on themselves. The coach can be saying, hey, you know what? This is something really great about you. It's really great about you. Yeah, I'm telling you, it is great. You go, oh man, they're blowing smoke at my dress. Nope, nope. I'm telling you. Let me tell you why this is really important that you get this and that you see it. So there's a lot of stuff that the coaches bring in that, in all honesty, you just don't realize.
Yeah. Excellent comments on this, Michael. I'm going to read one more of your testimonials. So and I'm reading these because everything you're saying is backed up by these people that are giving these testimonials. Now, if anybody out there listening wants to read these testimonials, they're on our website at executiveleadersactilec.com, and you can go on there, look up Michael on there on the About the Coaches, and you can actually read each of these testimonials that I'm reading from here. So this one is from a vice president of software engineering. And he says, it seems like every day you see people offering coaching without any background or experience. This is not the case with Michael. He knows his stuff and he has been doing this for years. Michael helped me to work smarter. He gave me the tools I needed to succeed in any situation. He helped me find purpose in life and helped me set goals for the future. He especially helped me when I was deciding to leave my old company and pursue an opportunity with a new company that included equity and ownership. Originally, I was very skeptical about working with a coach, but Michael was worth every minute.
Cool.
Excellent. So here's one of the things I'm going to ask you about.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned these things about critical thinking, problem solving, talent leadership, change leadership. You know, and it's interesting. We talk to a lot of people, and I know you've talked to people about this, about, critical thinking skills. And there's a lot of people out there that'll tell you, yeah, I think I'm a pretty good critical thinker, or I'm good at problem solving, or I'm a great team leader. Mm-hmm. But the problem is when you really ask them to unpack how they obtain those skills, they might come up with an answer such as, I went to a class, or I read a book, or I saw a PowerPoint, or I had a mentor that taught me some of these things. But they really don't. It's rare to hear someone really come out and say, "This is where I actually got these things from," which is the inner core that we talk about a lot. It's that outer core that people see, that you're going to find maybe on a annual review. Something like that with critical thinking. Yeah, I'm a great critical thinker. I'm going to give you 1 to 5. I think I'll give you a 3.5 today because I think you're a great critical thinker. Mm-hmm. You're better than average. But no one really has the ability. Now, I shouldn't say nobody, but it's pretty rare when someone can come and tell you exactly where that comes from. And that becomes the job of a coach. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, that's part of it. And the other part of it is, how do you actually do it?
Yeah.
Explain to me what critical thinking is, what your understanding of what critical thinking is, and explain to me how you do that. Yeah. That is a very difficult thing that people have a lot of challenges with because they've never really thought about it. They've really never thought it through. And then they've never really thought about, how do I discuss it? How do I talk about it? So as they're figuring out how to talk about it, they'll bring part of the package to it. And then the coach can start saying, well, how about this part of it? How about that part of it? How about what does critical thinking and emotions come into this? Does it come into this at all? What is the aim of critical thinking? How do you get your own prejudices and biases out of the way? Tell me what you do exactly so that you're not riding on the rails of your own biases. So that's one of those things of critical thinking. You know what it is, and you'll be able to put it to the side. And what it is, and then you really take a look at it. So then once you start laying out what critical thinking is, then why is it necessary? Why would it be important for you to be really skillful at critical thinking so that you can then move into that next leadership position of strategic thinking? Why is that important? Now you got people going, whoa, I haven't quite thought about it like that. That it's this and this and this and then, and start saying, well, and that's what the conversations become. And why is that necessary? So that you can take it to the team. And why is it necessary that you don't get these things mixed up? Because the order is important. because most leaders, when they mess up, they get their order out of sequence because it's the only thing that they know. They don't know to do it in a different sequence. So if they're self-sabotaging, it's because they're doing it out of their fears and their doubts and their insecurities, and they start working against themselves. They don't know how to unwrap that and now put it into a different kind of formula, a different kind of step procedure of this is how you do leadership. Since they don't know it, they then hobble themselves, and then they naturally limit themselves unknowingly. They don't mean to be doing it, but they don't know any better, and they haven't had any experiences that would help them to see that differently. Whereas a coach has been here lots of times, and for me to be able to, or for you to be able to say, here's what it is. I'm not going to just dump it on you because I need to have you help explore it so that you start to see it. But I've got a pretty good idea of where you're messing yourself up right from the get-go. And from there, we develop that. So that's really important to do because everybody is different. And that coach has that ability to make those distinctions between individuals and work with you as that individual to help you discover it, own it, claim it, get out there and do it. That's what it's really all about.
I'm going to read one more. I have to read one more testimonial, Mike, because Michael, because every time you give me an answer, someone else that you've worked with tells me the same thing on these testimonials. So I'm going to read this. This is from another executive vice president. And again, I'm not mentioning names, but just you can go and read these on our website. But Michael has been a kind and compassionate coach, yet he knows how to keep your feet to the fire and help you get the things done. My creative mind needed someone who can help me get it out of my brain and onto paper, and then from paper to execution. Michael has helped me achieve this every step of the way. With many mountains still to climb, the things Michael has taught me are the things that stay with you. Michael is not a good coach. He is a great coach. Michael's love for helping others succeed is his passion. If you want to win, Michael can help you get there. I think there's a very important thing that was a very important statement that comes out of this. And with many mountains still to climb, Michael has taught me, essentially, Michael's given me the tools. I'm not done. I'm not there yet. But now I have those tools in my bag that I can reach into and understand, just like you were saying, where does the critical thinking, how does that impact strategic leadership? How does that strategic leadership impact a disciple leadership? Change leadership. How does it impact the driver? It's important to understand that, if I just tell you I'm a critical thinker, that's not the end of the story. That's the tip of the iceberg. So where do you go next with that critical thinking? And that's what the thing about executive coaching is, giving someone those tools and that understanding on where to go next, and to recognize where they're at, what they're dealing with, and now what do I got to do with this?
Yeah, it's really, really important for leaders to understand that. I can't emphasize it enough. In fact, Rich, in some ways, it is so fundamental that coaches, not something that leaders understand where they are in that wheel, you might say, of leadership opportunities, leadership options, that they understand it and they know how to move through it. It's kind of like driving a big rig, knowing how to go through those different gear shifts and the timing of the gear shifts. And when you do this and when you do that, if you don't understand that, your rig's not going anywhere. And how to take on the mountains, how to go down the slopes, how to do it, on the straight lanes, and how do you deal with when the traffic's really heavy. When you're really good at that stuff, there's a lot of skills, a lot of timing that goes into that. And so on one hand, most leaders don't realize, the complexity of real great leadership. They just don't understand the complexity of it. And since they don't understand it, they don't know how to access it. They don't know how to practice it. Most leaders, if you take a look at them, they may have a leadership style of one or two, maybe three. I mean, Gallup says, if you got 3 leadership styles that you're pretty good at, you're actually in probably the like top 80%, maybe top 90% of leaders, because the rest of the field is so poor at doing it. But a really fine leader that has these abilities is probably looking at, a skill level of like being able to move out of 5, 6, maybe even 7 different layers or ways of leadership. And they do it pretty seamlessly. I've watched great leaders, and it was amazing. I was watching one particular fellow within 2 sentences, Rich. I watched him move move from one leadership style to another leadership style to another leadership style seamlessly within about 30 seconds. I thought, this guy gets it. He just does it. He doesn't think about it. And so that's what that is. And that's what that whole thing is, that leaders want to be able to tap their potential so they can tap into the potential of their teams, their organizations. But until you know how to tap into your potential and realize there's so much more, stop being afraid of what is there or what's not there. Stop being afraid of that. Stop doubting yourself. Embrace that and start realizing there is so much more, and it's real. I can actualize it. I can actually bring it forth. When you're that kind of a leader, man, you can set your freaking, your team, your organization on fire. Your team can only be as good as you are.
Yeah.
That's the deal. I mean, if you're taking your team, if you're at a level 4 kind of leader, your team can go up to like a 3, where before they may have been stuck like at a 2, right? And if you know how to take it to a 5, then your team, interestingly enough, can now take it to the level of 4. You will always be here, but your team will always be 1 under, because they're still looking how to connect at that higher level. And of course, when those a few that do break out and actually now start working at that same level as you do, man, you've done a masterful job in developing that leader to become his or her own leader. And then you just let them fly, let them go where they're going to go. So it's trickier than you might think it is, but at some level, like anything else, at first it's very complex, and then it's like, just what it is. Like, I love the saying about Zen. It's like, before you get into Zen, it's like the birds are the birds, and the mountains are the mountains, the trees are the trees, and then you get into Zen, right? Now all of a sudden the Zen, the birds are Zen, the mountains are Zen, the trees are Zen, everything's Zen. It's so cool, everything's so Zen. They get to a certain point, the birds, trees, the mountains. So it's all cool. But it's from a completely different.
All good. I got to tell you, we've talked about this a lot, and I think there's an awesome analogy out there about coaching. And I'm a huge fan of baseball, and I've grown up around baseball. I've been around baseball my whole life. I've got one son that I've got an older boy that played at the college level. I've got another boy now that's off to play at the college level this fall. Both pitchers. Okay, so Tom House, who is arguably one of the best pitching coaches ever, he has this analogy. He says you're going to take 2 pitchers that show up with essentially the same mechanics in pitching, the same identical mechanics. One of those was self-taught. Watched videos, did whatever, self-taught, did it on their own. The next one did it with a coach and is still using a coach. Which one do you think is going to go further in their career? Simple question. There's no doubt that the person who has a coach is going to be able to continue to expand, because what a coach does, they don't just look at who you are right here. They look at your potential. They look at where, what your past experiences have got you to a certain point. And then a good coach will take that where you currently are, take your potential and turn that into future performance. That's the difference. That's the difference. Now, there is a lot of CEOs in the world. And if you look at the surveys, only 25% of the CEOs in the world get a favorable nod from their employees, from their organizations and their customers. Here's the thing, out of that 25%, only 5% of the true rock stars. And I'll tell you, you would be hard pressed to find anybody in that 5% who has not had a coach.
I agree. One of the things that you were talking about, I love the example you're giving of, the pitching coach, is this. What really happens, what really happens at some level is not just the skills, the conversations, stop doing this, start doing more of this, practice this. It's all that kind of directional kind of stuff. What really happens at another level is this, is that the coach is able to pass along to you a value that you may have had, maybe you didn't have, something that's it's a value of a different perception about who you are, future performance, who you
Yes.
can become, what you have, what it is that you're bringing to it. It and you if you talk to players that play at that high level, they'll say, "Let me tell you what my coach taught me." Now, did the guy already know the idea, the principle of what the coach taught him? Probably so. Probably heard it, hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times.
Yeah.
But what the coach was able to do was to get that principle, that way of doing things into them.
Yes.
Now they owned it. It wasn't just an idea. It wasn't some sort of notion. It wasn't like that would be a good idea one of these days. Yeah, we all know that. It's something that became part of them. That's why they changed. They took the value or the values that coach saw that individual really required, had to have in order to become the player that they wanted to become. And that you cannot get that out of a book. You cannot get that out of a TED talk. You cannot get that just by listening to some audio podcast. It is a transfer that happens from one human being to another. It's a human being thing that must happen, that only beings can do to each other.
Yeah.
And that's why it works. It's that transference value of now that not just that I have the tools, but this deep belief in who you are and that you can take on difficult things that you haven't even begun to imagine. But you're okay. Whatever's coming around the corner, I'm ready for it. That's a whole different place.
Right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for letting me interview you today and helping our listeners get a better feel of who you are and what makes you tick. So, if they wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Well, just go over to our website. You know the story. What's the website we go to? And there we are. We're right there. Bingo,
Yep.
bingo. You always slide out with the end of the podcast.
Yep. Executive Leaders Act, ILEC.com. You can get Michael's phone number there. You can get his email address there, and you can reach out and spend some time with him because you won't be disappointed. I guarantee it. So, and once again, thank you all for listening. We're at the end of another May 9 Executive Coaching ACT episode. And shout out right now to our friends in Canada. We've got a lot of folks up in Canada that are great listeners, great followers, and we appreciate everything you do for us.
And
So, and
remember,
again,
upcoming is going to be Rich's interview.
yeah, and you may or may not want to miss that one.
It'll be a great one. It will be. You'll want to catch it for certain.
All
All
righty.
right.
So once again, take care. We'll see you.